and welcome to my channel. Today I want to show you guys how I'm installing drip irrigation right here at my home garden. This is a project that I have been trying to get done for a couple years now, and I've kind of been dragging my feet because I actually like the process of hand watering my plants. It gives me an opportunity to be out in the garden, check each individual plant, see what's going on, and I kind of find it therapeutic in a certain way. But at this point in my life, I am managing two large gardens. This is my home garden right here, which is the smallest of the two. And then I have a second garden on a couple acres on my aunt's property, and I just can't be there every day to water anything. So I knew if I was going to be expanding and building another garden there, that I needed to have an automatic watering type of system or a drip irrigation system. Earlier this year, I installed about 1,000 feet almost of drip irrigation over at my second garden, so I knew that garden was maintained and well taken care of. In between my visits, I only go there about once, maybe twice a week. And the system that I used, or the drip irrigation kit that I got, worked amazingly well. I was actually so impressed how easy it was for me to put together all by myself without knowing anything really about tools, plumbing, PVC, how to install spigots, like all of this other stuff, on top of calculating PSI, gallons per hour, if you're going to have enough water pressure to maintain the entire line of that drip irrigation system. So it actually took me a couple months to do some research, and I stumbled upon a website called dripdepot.com. I've mentioned it before. Lots of gardeners use their products. But the great thing about them is that they have kits that have every single part that you're going to need to complete an entire system. So it took the guesswork and the headache of trying to calculate, how much of each piece do I need, and that they're all compatible with each other, because all the components of drip irrigation systems come in lots of different sizes. Drip Depot has lots of different kits to choose from. They have long, small farm row style drip irrigation kits, which is what I went with because I'm basically a mini farm at this point. But they also had kits for raised garden beds or even container gardening. So they really have a kit for any kind of garden that you might have. I installed almost 1,000 foot of drip irrigation over there in less than an hour. Really, it was that quick. And I did it all by myself. The best part about it is as soon as I turned the system on, it worked from beginning to end, no problems, which is really rare when it comes to do-it-yourself projects. There's always something that goes wrong, but it just worked perfectly. And I was so impressed that I was like, I have to get this installed here at my home garden. By the way, I'm not sponsored by them. They didn't give me free products, none of that kind of thing. I spent my own money to get all these kits and supplies. I just really like their products. It's a very easy kit for a home backyard gardener like me, the average person that, isn't that handy or savvy with tools and all of those kinds of things. So if I can do it, so can you. The exact kit that I'm using here in my home garden is their deluxe, I believe it's the Small Farm 15 row kit. Now that I know what drip irrigation I'm going to be using, I had to decide if I was going to get an automatic water timer. For many years, I've used the Melnor, I think it's a 4 spigot opening water timer. It's pretty budget friendly and it worked great. However, now that I'm going all out with an official real drip irrigation system, I decided I was going to upgrade my water timer to one that connects to Wi-Fi and has an app. That way I can check, my garden. I can turn the water on or off anywhere in the world by using the app on my phone. So I landed on this kit from RainPoint. I got this from Amazon, and I'll definitely link below in the description where I get all of the supplies. It has this very nice display that goes inside of your house. It connects with the local weather, and it all displays right here on this handy little monitor. This is the part that goes outside and connects to your spigot. This one has 2 attachments because I have a huge garden. I wanted to make sure I had an extra spigot in case I wanted to do 2 separate drip irrigation systems. So I went ahead and got the double, but they definitely sell it with just 1 outlet. It has a left side and a right side. This connects to your spigot and it relays the information through Bluetooth over to the RainPoint display inside of my house. The really cool thing about this is that since it connects to local weather data, if the chance of rain is at a certain level or higher, it will actually delay watering the garden. So that saves you, water, and you're not overwatering your plants. However, I can't tell you how many times it says the chance of rain here in my Florida garden is 40-50%, and it actually doesn't rain in my specific backyard. Maybe in other parts or the surrounding area, but in my backyard it doesn't. So if you want your data to be even more accurate, you can get a soil sensor. This is in addition to the kit that comes with this display already, But you put the sensor into your soil and it knows if it rained, right? It senses the water levels and things like that in the soil, and it gives you a lot more accuracy when it comes to watering your garden. The app is free, by the way. You don't have to pay like a subscription service or anything like that. All right, so now I want to talk to you about all the pieces and components that go into the drip irrigation kit. And I want to explain specifically what each piece is for, because it might seem a little overwhelming when you're looking at these kits and trying to decide on all the different parts that you need. I would not skimp out on any of these parts, okay? I followed and built the kit exactly, how Drip Depot suggests that you should, and it worked perfectly. I don't recommend that you deviate or skip a certain item or something like that, but I'll explain what each one does, how you connect it all together, and then demonstrate how to install a line of drip irrigation here in the garden. The best part about Drip Depot's kits is that you don't need any tools to put it together besides this little hole punch tool that comes with the kit. You're going to use this to punch holes into the drip irrigation tubing to connect everything together. Besides this tool, you will need a pair of kitchen scissors to cut the tubing, and that's pretty much it. And I have to say, I was very impressed by Drip Depot's website. They have tons of videos. I am a visual learner and I have to kind of see people doing things, so I love their videos. They have a YouTube channel as well, but they have the videos linked on their product pages along with a lot of PDF files and things like that to help you make the proper calculations and figure out, how to piece everything together. The kit comes with a pack of heavy-duty landscape staples to help you secure the tubing around your garden. The kit will come with your drip tape that has the emitters built into them, okay? So you don't have to sit there and punch holes every certain inches or whatever. It's already built in. They have lots of different sizes to choose from. This particular one has an emitter every 12 inches. I also purchased as extra a roll of drip tubing that has emitters every 8 inches for my smaller crops like lettuces and greens and stuff like that. But the 12-inch spacing is probably what I'm going to use the most because I kind of follow square foot gardening guidelines. So this is perfect for growing tomatoes and peppers, cabbages, broccoli, all of those kinds of things that normally I space 12 inches apart. The kit will also come with a roll of main line tubing. This tubing is what's coming from your spigot. You send it out into your property, out to your garden. You can bury this under the ground if you have to so you don't trip on it and that kind of thing. But this is the mainline tubing. The purpose of this is to bring the water from your spigot to the beginning of where your drip irrigation system starts. I really like how they label every single piece. So this was loose in the box and I was looking at it, I'm like, what is this one for? But it says right on here that this is their Permalock tubing end. So this is the end for the main line tubing. After I stretch the main line tubing out across my garden and cut the end, this is the cap that I'm going to push into the very end of the main line tubing to close it off. It also will include a certain number of drip tape endings. So this is the ending that will close your line of the flat drip tape. Depending on what size kit you get, I got the 15 row kit, so it comes with 15 of these, so I can make 15 lines of flat drip tape basically. But again, this is going to vary depending on the size of kit. They have a 10 row kit, so you would get 10 of these, not 15. This is called an adapter valve. So you're going to use this hole punch tool right here to punch a hole in your main line. You're going to stick this valve into the main line, and the other end is where the flat drip tape will be connected to your main line. And what's really cool about these is that you can close each individual valve. So you just take this little thing right here and twist it shut if you wanted to. So let's say you decide you want to close down one row of your drip tape but leave the other ones open. You can just manually go in there and shut that particular row if you wanted to. These things are super easy to connect everything together because some drip irrigation systems have all these little parts that you have to kind of push them all together and get them to lock. This is all inclusive. So you just pop it into that hole that you made on the mainline tubing, and then you just squeeze on or pop the drip tape right into here. Then you're going to twist this piece right here and it just closes or grabs onto that flat drip tape and keeps it all nicely connected. And you guys will see what I mean as I demonstrate how I connect all of this stuff. That's pretty much all of the pieces that go into installing the main line and the drip tape together. Let's talk about the pieces that you're going to connect together that will come off from your spigot. The first thing that you're going to tie onto your spigot is your automatic water timer if you're using one. That goes first. The next thing that's going to go on here is this hose vacuum breaker. And I'm just going to connect it onto the outlet right here of my automatic timer since that's the first piece. But what this does is that it prevents water that enters through your drip irrigation system from backflowing back up and going into your original water source. And that's important because as the water flows through your drip irrigation system, it can get contaminated with different things like dirt, particles, minerals. So you really don't want that to backflow back up into your, water source. The next thing you're going to attach is this filter system. This is going to filter out particles, minerals, whatever kind of buildup that comes from your water source and it's flowing through your drip irrigation system, because the last thing you want is like iron flowing through your drip irrigation system and clogging up the emitters. You do have to clean out the filter, every now and then, but what I really like is that this filter, you can just screw the filter out from the bottom right here to clean everything out. You don't have to unscrew the entire, everything that's connected onto the spigot just to get to the filter and clean it out. This is the next piece that goes on your system here after the hose vacuum breaker. So you've got your spigot, you've got your water timer, you have your hose vacuum breaker, and then the filter. The next thing you're gonna need is a pressure regulator, and do not skimp out on this, okay? Each kit on the Drip Depot website requires a certain PSI to function properly, or water pressure. Let's say, for example, you're not using one of these, and the water pressure going into your system is way too high. It can cause some of the flat drip tape that is connected to your mainline tubing to just pop off and snap off. Or if your water pressure is too low, then you're not going to get the same consistent supply of water from the very beginning or first emitter in your system all the way to the last one at the end of your line. And just so you know, most residential homes have a water pressure of 30 to 60 psi that comes straight out of your spigot. So my system needs 15 psi. I definitely need one of these pressure regulators to just lower down that pressure so that my system functions properly. So that goes right under the filter. And the last piece that you need is the female hose thread. This goes at the very end of all these pieces right here. This is where you attach your mainline tubing to your system. And that's it, guys. That's every single piece and the order of which you need to attach them so that your system functions properly. This is now ready to be attached to the spigot. And then I'm going to pop on the mainline tubing and get started installing my drip irrigation system. All right, so I ran across my first problem for this project, and that's that this spigot here is really old and I can't unscrew certain pieces or tighten it up to prevent it from dripping everywhere when I install this onto the spigot here. This whole thing just needs to be replaced. In the meantime, I have a very short water hose right here because when I hook this on it, it works, like it's not dripping water everywhere. Ideally, you would want this to be attached right here and then run your mainline tubing, but this is what I gotta do to make it work in the meantime until I get this old spigot replaced. I'm gonna install the mainline tubing by connecting it here and just give it some extra slack, just in case when they fix this whole spigot situation that I might need some extra, slack or room in that mainline tubing before I cut it. My kit comes with like 100 foot or 50 foot of mainline tubing, which is way more than what I needed. If you find that these things won't bend or get straight, it does help if you put it in the hot sun for a couple hours. It kind of softens it up a little bit and makes it more workable. But anyways, you just take the mainline tubing, you push it through on the end here, push it as hard as you can, ensuring that it gets up in there before you screw this and lock it in place. So I'm just gonna give it some of that extra slack, like I said. And right here actually is the beginning of my garden and the soil where I'm gonna run this mainline tubing straight in that direction. I'm gonna take one of those landscape staples and put it in place. I completely gutted out and restarted my garden. So that's why I'm trying to install this drip irrigation system before I start planting up my fall garden. So that's why everything looks pretty clear and empty, but it's a blank slate to get creative and really plant an awesome garden. I do like to use this black weed blocker material, especially in my pathways here, but it has these lines that are printed every foot. So that's really helpful when you're installing drip irrigation type systems to make your lines nice and straight. All right, so this is the end of where I want to cut my mainline tubing. You can bury this under the ground if you prefer, but because I'm using the weed blocking material, that kind of thing, I just have it running over the surface. So I'm gonna take my scissors here and just cut. Then this is the Permalock tubing end for the main line. Push it together and get that mainline tubing as far as you can inside of here before you decide to rotate this and lock it in place. And that's it. I basically installed that mainline tubing in about 2 minutes. Really, it was that easy. So here's my mainline tubing. And then I'm going to be attaching the flat drip tape with the emitters that are built in into the mainline tubing and straight down this way, because that's where my rows are going. This is a 4-foot wide bare space of soil here because this is where I'm going to plant things. Since I follow square foot gardening guidelines, I'm going to be installing the flat drip tape about 1 foot apart. The first one's going to go on the edge right here, and my plan is to plant a lot of things in the allium family, like onions, garlic, leeks, that kind of thing, chives, on the edges. I really like to do that with all the edges of my garden beds or even the raised garden beds because they're smaller plants and they kind of just fit along the edges really well. Plus, things in the allium family deter a lot of pests. They don't like the smell. So this is a perfect spot for me to put on one of the flat drip tapes. Since I know I'm going to be planting onions and stuff like that, I'm going to use the 8-inch spaced out emitter drip tape, because normally you plant onions about 4 or 6 inches apart, but I don't have a 6-inch, emitter spacing flat drip tape. I have an 8, so that's just what I'm going to use. They're going to be 8 inches apart, and that's totally fine. So one row of 8 inches is going to go this way. 1 foot away from this row is going to be my next row. In the middle here, I'm going to mix up my crops. I'm going to plant a lot of most likely brassicas, so things like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale in the middle because those plants get taller. So I put the taller things in the middle or towards the back of a bed, and then these shorter things on the edges like those onions. In between my crops of brassicas or whatever veggies that I'm putting here in the middle, I also mix it up and plant flowers and different herbs so that it's not all monocropped and all, in one straight line. That also helps a lot to deter pests and things like that. Because I know I'm going to be planting bigger crops, so to speak, like a broccoli plant or a cauliflower, I'm going to use the 12-inch spacing emitter for the 2 rows right here in the middle that are 1 foot apart, because I know the crops that are going there are going to be 12 inches apart. All these branches and stuff are leftovers from the crops that I was planting here last season. A lot of this is some sunflowers, actually. I cleared out everything and I just laid it all across, all the debris, the branches, the leaves, and then I solarized this entire area for almost 2 months this summer. So that's why the soil is pretty darn clean and clear of a lot of weeds and different things like that. These are bits and pieces left over from those sunflowers, and I'm just going to leave them there. They're going to continue decomposing down and being incorporated into the soil. All right, so the next step is to install the first line of my flat drip tape. This is a 100-foot roll of the 8-inch emitter spacing type of drip tape. I bought this in addition to what already came in the kit. The kit that I got came with, I believe it's 1,000 feet of the 12-inch spaced out emitter type of drip tape. And I know that's the one that I'm going to primarily use for the majority of all my crops. If I need more, I could always just buy some more. That's the other thing I like about this system. It's very customizable. You can use all different sizes depending on the crops that you're growing this season. All right, so let me show you how to install the very first line of your drip tape. I'm going to be using the 8-inch spaced out emitter drip tape line because, like I said, I'm going to be planting onions and stuff like that as the very first row here. The only thing you have to watch out for is that the thickness of the drip tape matches the thickness of whatever drip tape comes in your kit. That way you know that all of the fittings fit for all of the drip tape that you're using. My kit came with the 12-inch spaced out emitter type of flat drip tape that is 5/8 of an inch wide. So this is the 8-inch version with the emitters 8 inches apart, also 5/8 of an inch wide, so everything is compatible. All right, so we spread out the line of the flat drip tape to go in that direction. Now we're going to connect it here to our mainline tubing. We're going to get one of these adapter valves, and I'm going to push my flat tubing into it so I can lock it in place. Make sure the emitters are facing up. Once you get it in there, then you're going to spin this thing to lock it in place. And like I said, if the pressure in your system is not appropriate for the type of drip irrigation kit that you got, for example, if the pressure is too high, you don't have one of those pressure regulator things on your system, this is where it will pop off. So it will either just pop right out of the mainline tubing, or these will pop off right here from the drip line tubing. So just really important that you get the pressure right. And then I'm just going to line this up. I'm just eyeballing it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to get your little hole punch tool and you're going to decide where is it that you need to punch in that very first hole. Just push it in there until it punches in that hole for you, and that's all you need. Then you're going to take this end of the valve and push it in there. And that's it. It's very simple. I've just installed the first line of the flat drip tape onto the main tubing line. Then I'm going to take a landscape hook and I'm going to put it in right here near where the two are attaching to stabilize it and so my row doesn't move around. These are all my plants here that are ready to be transplanted into the garden once I get the drip irrigation system in place. But here's the end of our first line right here. This is the end of my garden area, so to speak. I put one last landscape hook in there, and I like to cut it about 2 or 3 inches before the next emitter. If you feel the emitter here, it feels like a little plate, like a little rectangle. You don't want to damage that because then you pretty much damage an emitter. So I like to cut this about 2 or 3 inches away, and then that's where I'm gonna close it off with this little lock here. And that's it. You've installed your first line of flat drip tape onto your mainline tubing. This system works already. If the ends are closed off, you can turn it on and kind of test it out, which I think is what I'm gonna do. All right, I turned it on just to test it out. You gotta wait maybe a minute or so that the air that's inside of these tubings will get pushed out, and then it will start emitting the water. But yeah, that emitter is definitely working. You can see the water is slowly dripping out. And this is the end here of that line we installed. I wanted to make sure that the very last emitter is working, and it is, just like the rest of them. All right, so now I've installed this one, this one, this one, and those two right there, and they all work perfectly. I love these kits from Drip Depot, man. They are the easiest, best option for a normal person like me, home backyard gardener. And it's as simple as that. You basically just repeat the same process to add more flat drip tape to the main line until your whole garden is installed with irrigation. I have a lot of work ahead of me. I have to plant up all of these plants right here just in time for my fall garden. There's one more thing that I forgot to mention about using a kit or a drip irrigation system from Drip Depot. They also have a fertilizer little mixer attachment. So you attach that onto your system over by the spigot, and you can pour in different kinds of fertilizers that are compatible with this kind of system and dial it to the mixing ratio, you know, fertilizer per water, whatever that might be. It will mix the fertilizer for you and then shoot it through the drip irrigation system to fertilize all of your plants like instantly. I am so excited about that. I fertilize a lot. I have a pretty strict fertilizer regimen, and I use organic granular fertilizer because I can fertilize my plants with small doses, like 1/8 of a cup or so every week, to keep the nutrient supply consistent, which is really important, especially if you're in a rainy garden area like me here in Florida, because that rain just constantly washes out the nutrients from my soil. So using an organic fertilizer like that is a great option, but it gets really time consuming having to go plant to plant when you have hundreds of plants to sprinkle some fertilizer at the base of all of those plants. I definitely went ahead and bought the little fertilizer attachment for this system, and the great thing about it is there are some organic fertilizers that are compatible with the system as well. Not only am I going to save time watering all my plants, but I'm also going to save a lot of time fertilizing everything. I am just really excited to be using this system going forward. I know it's going to help out my garden, and it's really going to thrive this season. If you want to find any of the products and things that I mentioned, I will definitely link in the description below so you can find the same ones. And if you have any ideas, suggestions, things that really helped you take your gardening to the next level in regards to irrigation and things like that, or even products that you really like to use, please just comment below. I learn just as much from you guys as you do from me. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching, and happy gardening.